I'm here because I don't want to be bound by anything. We're free to decide for ourselves exactly where we belong.
Hello everybody, Megazard X here, and for today I'm going to be reviewing a brand new anime series that is going to be airing for the fall of 2019, and it is none other than the highly anticipated My Hero Academia Season 4, and we're starting off with Episode 2 being Overhaul. And for this whole entire anime review series, I'm going to be going off of the episode numbers for the official one in terms of just the overall My Hero Academia series. So this episode is episode 65, just so I won't, confuse anybody with numbers in terms of different seasons, because I could potentially see myself reviewing this for multiple different seasons though. But just to establish that we're all on one page, it's going to be episode 65, and we'll be moving forward from this point forward though. But overall, I've been highly anticipating this season of anime for My Hero Academia, and we finally got it in our hands. Last week's episode was over a recap episode. I didn't review that one though, but overall I was genuinely impressed with that recap episode. They managed to do it with quite a bit of new content in there as well, just so it's not, kind of super bland, just hey, here's what happened in all the previous seasons. So I did like that episode though. But looking into this episode, we're kicking it off with Overhaul, and man, I gotta say, this episode, man, that first part of the episode was so super dark. I wasn't even ready for this mess though, but goodness, man, My Hero Academia never skips a beat in terms of them picking up right off of where they just left off of. And overall, I'm just hugely ecstatic about reviewing this series and just talking about my overall thoughts of this whole entire episode as a whole. So go ahead and kick back and relax and get comfortable as we're about to start this new anime review series of My Hero Academia. So go ahead and enjoy this brand new opening for this review series. Alright, so starting off at the very beginning of the episode, they did a quick little recap over some of the last events that actually happened within Season 3 of the anime. And just a quick recap, we just finished a provisional licensing exam that all of the students from, UA, that were all the first year students, they basically had to take this provisional licensing exam in order for them to exercise, their hero powers in the public, for them to be able to use it, because ideally no students or anybody could use hero powers without them having a license and working within a certain organization to do it. Because even though you can technically beat up on any bad guys, they do this as a precaution that way nobody abuses their powers, and that way everybody's held responsible, whether or not you actually wind up hurting somebody in the process, whether it been for good or bad acts, or if a natural disaster actually happens and you're trying to save people's lives, because they want to make sure that everybody's held accountable for their actions. So essentially, we had Izuku and the rest of his class take that exam, and thankfully Izuku managed to pass his exam, unlike some others such as Bakugo, which we saw throughout this episode was hugely disappointed with him not passing the exam. But thankfully they're allowing him, along with the others in the class that didn't pass, to be able to take it a second time at a later date though. But the next goal for Izuku's plan, in order for him to be like the #1 hero, to strive after All Might, is the Hero Work Study Program. And it's basically allowing any student that attends UA to be able to exercise their hero powers and be able to actually put them into use, in terms of just helping out the public in terms of if there is a villain attack, or if there's like a natural disaster and people need saving, anything that kind of falls in between those two lines though. So Izuku managed to contact Gran Torino, who was All Might's teacher back in the day, that basically taught him how to efficiently be able to use his powers for good. he basically contacted him and said, hey, can I work underneath your agency in order for, me be able to do the work study program? But Gran Torino said he's kind of busy with some other kind of case that he's working on, so he's not going to be able to allow Izuku to be able to work underneath him though. But he said, as a recommendation, hey, you can use All Might as a way to introduce you to his former sidekick's organization, and his former sidekick's name was Sir Night Eyes. So that's what he recommended. And then he was like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty cool. So he basically went to try to confront All Might and propose this idea to him, so that way he can be able to do the Heroes Work Study program. And then from there, we kind of had a little break in the action, because this is where the scene went from literally, the happy, kind of joyous, kind of laid back, kind of planning on what actually was going to happen next for our heroes, and we literally went to the dark side, literally and figuratively to the dark side, because then we got to jump over and see the League of Villains. So we see one of the League of Villains members leading one new person that we don't know too much of at the moment of whenever we saw him, and he was leading them back to their base of headquarters, where Shigaraki basically had his new headquarters for the League of Villains that was kind of like an offset area, away from society, kind of in the shadows, working, trying to scheme to see what else were they about to plan next. And the young boy they introduced to the League of Villains was none other than Overhaul, who is the young head of the Shia Hazakai organization. And essentially, they have to break this down in terms of, where this dude actually came from. Because in the past, before Heroes was such a big thing, they had a lot of different thugs and, low criminals that basically did the dirty work of anybody, that was basically running the underworld. And, it was just essentially a bunch of thugs. But as the rise of Heroes started to come around, especially once All Might hit the scene, it literally, suppressed all of the thug life and stuff, to where then at that point you were either a big time hero or you were a big time villain. It was either one or the other, and there wasn't too much in between. So the thug life kind of ceased to exist, except for Overhaul, with him being in the Shihazaki organization. Somehow they managed to, survive throughout all of this though, but they're probably one of the few organizations that's still considered in that thug life that will still, basically do work in the shadows like that. And essentially they do the work of other bigger villains, where basically it's like them hire, the bigger villains will basically hire these thug lives to basically help assist with them with their dirty work. So essentially kind of think about it as a professional team, or a professional like football team or basketball team or whatever else you want to, sport team you want to call it. Essentially you have like free agents where they'll basically jump around from team to team depending on the season and work for whoever, basically was paying them. Essentially that's the same thing with these thugs. They basically would have gone around from bigger villain to bigger villain and basically do whatever work they hired them for, so that way they just get paid. So that's essentially what these thugs are kind of known for though. But overall, Overhaul was not like what we would originally think in terms of this like status quo of these thugs, because essentially he walked in there and was like, no, I'm not going to join your organization, but I propose to you this idea. I can be the leader of your organization, because I don't have the funds or the money to be able to make all these shots and calls of these ideas that I got in my mind, where I'm going to be able to I can be the shot caller essentially and be able to plan out your League of Villains. Because hey, ideally you may have an idea or whatever though, but if you can't execute it right, or put all those plans into motion, what's even the point? It's basically just a wish, as he said. But essentially that's what he was kind of proposing to him. And then Shigaraki was getting impatient. It's like, why in the world would you bring this dude here if he's not going to work for us? Because I don't want anybody else basically commanding me what to do, and yada yada yada. And then Overhaul basically pointed out all of his past failures. You had big heroes such as Stain, Muscular, Moonfish, all villains that they basically looked up to within, the antagonist side of things, and he couldn't use them or execute them to their fullest potential for any of Shigaraki's previous plans, as we saw throughout the first 3 seasons. So that's why Overhaul was basically questioning his judgment. He said, hey, if you let me be the ruler, hey, I got some good plans where we can put them into motion. We can actually get some things accomplished. And essentially at that point, Shigaraki is like, no, you need to go ahead and leave, get out of here. I don't want anything to do with you though. So Shigaraki told one of his underlings, say, hey, basically, essentially, take out the trash. show them the exit, kick him out. But Overhaul wasn't putting up with that crap. He was like, no, I came here with a purpose. So he essentially, those two members were about to clash. One was, Overhaul was running towards one of them, and then the underling was running towards the other one. And Overhaul, all he had to do was basically touch the other dude's skin and like swipe down on it, and instantly it kind of showed like his blood vessels kind of like going all the way around his head and stuff. And basically the whole upper part of this dude's body from the waist up just exploded, and then you just saw like a big streaks of white that was actually his blood, and it turned red immediately afterward. And basically he exploded half of the dude's body just like that. And man, that really shocked me right there, because that's a devastating power, to be honest, which is actually, extremely quite frightening. This threw all of the, the League of Villain members into shock. Like, dang, this dude just killed that dude in a heartbeat. And then it got one other person kind of rushing in real quick. And then he basically, did almost the same thing and basically blew up his arm. And then Shigaraki's like, all right, this is enough. Hey, you took one of my dude's life and took an arm. So, man, this ain't gonna fly now. So Shigaraki rushed in there real quick, and Overhaul was very smart to know that, hey, I can't get real close with this dude because of his quirk. And essentially he told one of his members to kind of jump in there and take the hit, and one of Overhaul's members took the hit for him and basically, got his body kind of, broken down. It just decayed right in front of him though. And then essentially Shigaraki's like, well, if you knew you were gonna come in here with a goal like this, you should have just showed all your cards up, because, Overhaul came in here not, just as one single person though, but no, he came in here with his crew. He knew what was up. So both sides lost one person, as well as, Shigaraki's side also losing one dude's arm. So basically Shigaraki's side was down one person in an arm compared to the other side that was just down by one person. But anyway, Overhaul was basically saying, all right, enough, enough blood is kind of shed, and it's pointless for us to fight because we generally somewhat have a common goal with them all being villains to a degree. So he was basically saying, hey, whenever you're ready to talk, here's my business card and we can go ahead and talk. And he's like, hey, just letting you know, hey, the sooner we talk, it's going to be the better for you, because I got plans in store for you. Essentially is what he said as he kind of went out the door. And then you kind of saw some flashbacks with Shigaraki and his master, and how he said his master basically did everything for him because he was basically trying to set up Shigaraki in the best situation as possible, because he did everything for him, as we previously known from the past season that essentially the hero side as well as the villain side are leaderless. All Might retiring, All for One, getting beat up to the point where now he's in jail, and he basically doesn't have any more kind of power kind of residing in him, to where he's no longer a threat anymore. So you take out All Might and you take out All for One, there's no leader on either side. So who's gonna raise up from the heroes and who's gonna raise up from the villains to be able to lead each other's organizations? And that's the point where Shigaraki's at, because he's trying to take the position for All for One in terms of leading all the villains. And that is basically where that scene ends. And then we manage to transition from that dark side and we kind of go back into the light, where we're going back to where Izuku is basically trying to get that recommendation in order for him to get that work study program. So he winds up confronting All Might and asks him, this question and say, hey, can you introduce me to your former sidekick, Sir Night-Eye? And then All Might is like, what, you want to do this? And he's like, well, let me tell you one of three things why I disagree with, with you kind of going about that business. Essentially, he said, first, he said he was the one that recommended that, hey, it might be too much for heroes to be able to do a work study with them being, year one students. So he didn't recommend it for that goal. Number two, Izuku basically needed to work on his shoot style. So he said that basically that wasn't perfected yet, and hey, you got a lot more work to do in order to perfect that kind of style. And then third, he just didn't like the personality of his former sidekick, so he kind of didn't want to talk to him for personal reasons. But Izuku was trying to convince All Might to say, hey, it might be through this hero work study that I might be able to help develop my powers and become a better hero faster than just me kind of training alone like this. Like, this is probably my next step in goal in order to become, the number one hero. So essentially All Might was like, well, I'm not going to basically, recommend you to this guy though. However, emphasis on I. So All Might introduces Togeda to Izuku and say, hey, look, Togeda works for Sir Not-Eye's organization. He works right underneath him for a work study. And Togeda said, yeah, I've been working for Sir Not-Eye for about a year now. And basically, All Might was like, hey, use Togeda as a way for him to introduce you to Sir Not-Eye and see at that point, you know, whether or not he could be able to manage to get that hero work study program through him. And basically Izuku was like, oh, okay, that's a really good plan. And the only thing that Togeda basically asked of Izuku was essentially, hey, what kind of hero do you want to be? And for a second, Izuku was basically saying, I want to make, you know, people smile, but he kind of cut himself off halfway through it, because it seemed like to me, it was kind of showing how, you know, Izuku was essentially striving up to All Might's ideals and kind of want to walk right behind him in his same exact steps. However, he almost kind of caught himself saying that, and he's like, you know what, through my personal experience, it's really to make other people, you know, make them feel safe and make them feel secure to where they don't have to cry, based upon everything else that happened within the first 3 seasons, to all the people that to all the people that got affected around him, such as like his mother or his friend being Bakugo, and all the, you know, all the crap that they had to basically go through with all of these different villain encounters. So essentially, that's what he kind of portrayed to Togeda, and then he was like, okay, as long as you got that in, you know, that kind of mindset, I can recommend you to Sir Not-Eye. And the interesting thing to note is, the second that they left, All Might said to himself, hey, and it kind of showed back in the flashback that said, hey, he was talking to the principal and said, hey, you know, Togeda over here is probably a good ideal, you know, prospect in order for you to basically pass down your powers to him. And for a good while, All Might was essentially considering that idea. And he basically said, if he hadn't met Midoriya at the time that he did, most likely and highly likely, he was going to pass on his powers to Togeda, because he seemed like the next ideal kind of person to be able to have the power of one for all. But essentially from there, we managed to jump from that scene, and we kind of went back to the dorm life, and you saw Izuku dashing out of there real fast over the weekend of, you know, him trying to get over there and try to meet Sir Not-Eye for the first time. And, you know, all of his other students were just, you know, carry on with their business, whether or not they had study plans or something like that, or just, you know, doing whatever on the weekend. And then you also got to see a brief moment of Bakugo and Todoroki, and that just kind of showed how, you know, them basically not passing that, you know, exam due to whatever kind of circumstances that kind of happened in that last arc. However, because, you know, Bakugo essentially got in the, you know, big fight with Midoriya, and, you know, Midoriya managed to kind of get out of it because, you know, hey, he was basically playing that self-defense kind of role though. But anyway, it just kind of showed some previous events that happened from the previous season though. But Izuku managed to finally be able to make it to Sir Not-Eye's organization. And the key thing with this is that Togeda managed to, you know, give him some advice on was essentially, hey, Sir Not-Eye, he is very super strict. Like this dude is so strict. I mean, this dude looks, you know, worse than my dad. And I thought my dad was pretty strict. But anyway, this dude was super strict. However, the weird irony of this is, this dude likes jokes, or likes, you know, anything that's kind of funny or humorous to him. So he said, hey, if you manage to make him laugh, you can get on his good side, because then he'll basically open up to you. So he said, as long as, you know, if you can manage to make him laugh, you're probably going to be able to get this hero work study program through his organization. So he had all of that in mind, and he was like, alrighty, so walk through these doors, and from that point forward, hey, you're going to be able to, you know, get this work study. And he essentially walked through those doors, and immediately he saw this one sidekick of this dude's, you know, pinned to a board, and was getting like on a tickle machine and stuff. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And that's essentially what Izuku's reaction was as well. And basically, because the matter of fact that she couldn't get him to laugh, he kind of did that as like a little punishment thing though. So essentially, you know, right off the bat, you got that staring gleam look from Sir Not-Eye straight to Izuku, and he's like, oh crap, I got like seconds, baby, seconds. And he was thinking of something on the fly, something that could be like really funny to help, you know, humor him to be able to get on his good side. So he basically, you know, kind of messed with his hair, messed with his face a little bit, and pulled out that iconic looking face from none other than All Might himself. And he basically said, hey, I'm Izuku, but in All Might's tone and look and everything else though. And essentially, from the stare that he kind of got from it, it didn't quite seem like, that kind of won him over. And it wasn't really funny in his eyes, though. But that's essentially where the episode ended, though. But overall, man, this was a great start. I was, hugely shocked that that whole scene with Shigaraki and Overhaul getting introduced and seeing Overhaul's powers like that was completely insane. Like, I wasn't expecting nothing like that. Because it seems like, because we didn't get like the official term or whatever his quirk is, but I guess it has something to do with messing with like the blood flow of, your body and being able to make it like explode, on contact or whatever though. So I'm thinking that's essentially kind of where I'm thinking, whatever his root of his powers is something to do with, fluid manipulation or something like that within a person's body. At least that's what I'm thinking of. But overall, that power was extremely devastating though. And in terms of, Zuko being able to get this work study, I hope he gets it because, man, things weren't looking pretty bright at the end of that episode, though. But things are getting pretty serious, though. But that is all that I have for y'all for this week's episode review of My Hero Academia. So if you really like this video, go ahead and hit that like button and that subscribe button to keep up to date on all things My Hero Academia. Will Izuku Midoriya manage to suppress Sir Night-Eye and get in the lab? Or will he fail miserably and despite his efforts fail to attain a hero work study? And who is this new villain Overhaul and his overall goal and objective for the League of Villains? We'll find out about this and more in next week's review. So remember, until whatever video I make next, go beyond. Plus Ultra!